Welcome back to Zaka Stokvel Insights. We're continuing our conversation on Sisonke Stokvel. Earlier, we explored their growth, and now we look ahead. This group is setting its sights on property ownership, personal development, and community upliftment. Still with me is Thabiso Masurubele, who will help us to understand this group even more and how they can turn their vision into action, from managing credit to securing legal structures for big ventures. Thabiso, before we get into that in more details, I would like us to look at just the nature of Stokvels. It seems like it's more into the scale of short-term gains instead of looking at long-term growth. So how are they evolving, and why is it important for Stokvels to look at themselves as more as a business when it comes to long-term investment?
Yeah, I think you raise a very important question, Renan. So in our discussions with Stokvel, we've always emphasized the need to distinguish between saving and investing. And I think what a lot of Stokvels do, they interchange those words, meaning we're saving. So if you ask them, do you guys invest? They say, I don't know, we do invest. We save every month, and then at the end of the year, we share that money. So the discussions that we've had with Stokvels is to say saving is more short term. So saving, you're saving towards a particular aim. You need to buy uniform, which is a great thing. We need to buy groceries in December, whatever. But there's an objective. It's a short-term objective, and short-term is 12 months. So groups will say, we want to travel to Durban, we want to buy this particular thing. So you save for that particular purpose, which is great. What you refer to is creating wealth. And a lot of Stokvels say, we joined the Stokvel and we formed the Stokvel and we continue to exist in the Stokvel because we believe in creating collective wealth. Now, you're not going to create collective wealth if you're saving and then at the end of the year you're sharing money. And that's where what you're talking about comes in. So the discussion we have with Stokvels is to say, your constitution says you want to create wealth. Let's unpack what does that mean. It means this is money that you're going to have beyond the 12 months that you are. And there are certain principles that you then have to adhere to. One of those is that when you talk about investing, you must be then prepared to say, in the next 3 years, it's a longer term period. You're looking at longer term periods. So you then be able to say, as the collective in this group, we acknowledge that we're not going to touch any returns, or we don't have any expectation of seeing any returns in the next 12 or 24 months. But we look at getting returns over a longer period of time. And those returns over a longer period of time becomes greater. They become greater returns. And then that's where you start talking about, that's how you create wealth beyond just saving. And then you also then have to agree, this is how we define wealth and who is to benefit from that wealth. Because I think a lot of groups, it's about, I want to benefit. I'm a member of the Stokvel, so I want to benefit. So more and more we engaging with groups that are saying, I want my children to benefit from this thing. So my child is 10 now, but I want my child to benefit. So you move what you've been doing as an individual when you talk about things like, education annuities, all these different types of individual investments that you have that will benefit your children once they turn 18. You then bring that into a group scenario and say, guys, how do we then, start thinking about investment and look at instruments that are over a longer period of time, so that once we put this money in, we're not expecting it back, at least in its entirety, at the end of 12 months in December. We might expect a portion of it, but a big chunk of it remains there, so that we allow this money that we're putting away, we allow it enough time to grow. Because money grows over a longer period of time, and depending on which instrument you use, a lot of Stokvels are averse to high risk investments. So if you're wanting lower risk investments, those happen over a period of time. But then you go back to your constitution, say, we're creating this wealth not only for us, but for our families and our children who come. So that discussion is ongoing with groups to say, guys, it's a very good thing to talk about investment, but understand what investment is. So, for instance, when they've invested in shares, shares have ups and downs. So sometimes they say, but they're going down, let's withdraw our money. And then you have to say, but hold on, they will come back up. So don't look at it over a short period of time. Engage with a specialist who will then show you that even though they go up and down, but the general growth is upwards. So even if they're going up and they go down, they don't go down to the same extent that they were the previous cycle. So even though the cycle is, up, down, but it's moving on an upward trajectory, so that there's growth, consistent growth over a period of time.
Just on that point of creating collective wealth as well, I think adaptation to technological advancements is a part of it. But looking at the rise of cybercrime as well, Thabiso, it makes sense if people are a bit fearful when it comes to digital banking and smartphone theft as well. But how does Thai Vision Media Consultants, how would you calm those fears?
There are different things. Remember, as we always say that the more security you have around technology, the more you have people who are also working to bypass that security. So criminals are always at work. So one of the things that we say is that always keep up to date and always do things that you're comfortable with. So for instance, if as a collective you're not comfortable with cell phone banking, and always look at your environment. If you're in an environment where cell phone theft is rife, then cell phone banking is not going to work for you, and you're not comfortable with cell phone banking, then stick to something that you're comfortable with. I mean, we've had groups that were very comfortable with dealing with cash, and we've said that cash is dangerous, and it is dangerous, and there are alternatives, but they've been able to show us that it's actually safer for them to handle cash because they handle cash in their day-to-day operations. So for instance, you've got taxi owners who already have systems in place that ensure that their cash is secured. So proceed, even though we like to say cash is dangerous, but they've got systems that they're comfortable with, and when you look at the statistics, they are more safe with the cash thing as opposed to maybe using cell phone banking, where they know that their cell phone will be stolen or they'll be kidnapped and forced to get into their banking apps and so on. So we always encourage people to look at systems that they are familiar with and that they are comfortable with, because you'll get scammed if you're not very comfortable with whatever system that you are using.
Now, Thabiso, it seems like they do have a huge appetite for risk here as well. Cash is dangerous, but it seems like they want to build more cash on their case. And they want to, venture into property by building 20 cottages. That's big. So how do they go around or navigate around that?
The foundation is always key. So you've got to start and look at the admin and say, if we're going to embark on this huge project, we can't embark on it as an informal stokvel, as it were. So what defines an informal stokvel? An informal stokvel is a stokvel that only exists by way of constitution. So if that's all you have, then I think you can safely refer to yourself as an informal stokvel. But if you want to start having greater ambitions of building such major projects, you then have to make sure that your admin is intact. What do we mean by that? Say, who are going to be the owners of these particular assets that we're building? Because these are huge assets. I mean, these are things that talk about generational wealth. So you've got to make sure that your foundation, and by that we mean the paperwork from the get-go, is intact. So what paperwork do they have? If it's just the constitution of the stokvel that they have, that's going to be insufficient, because that's not going to allow them to enter into those huge transactions. So how do you transact, for instance, your stokvel savings account? You're not going to be able to be drawing monies that are required for such big projects, and they get very complicated. So what are the instruments that you need to put in place? You need to register as a company, first and foremost. And then the company owns that particular assets. Who are the beneficiaries of those assets? The company documents then specify that these are the shareholders. And then what that then does is it allows every individual member to then have a will to say, in the event of my passing, I do have a shareholding in that particular company that happens to be a stokvel. So I bequeath whatever my shareholding in that company to this person. So that doesn't also give a headache to the stokvel in the event of a member passing. You've got 3 different people who are dependents of the person who's passed away competing for that thing. People are able to include in their will that this is the asset that I have, which is the shareholding part of that particular project that we did as a stokvel. And that peace of mind that I have in that group, I bequeath to this specific person. And once they come with that document to the group, the necessary transfers happen, and it ensures that things keep moving in a way that they should continue.
I think probably the slogan for this episode is creating collective wealth One Stokvel at a time.
One Stokvel at a time.
Well, that's all you have, or we have, for this week. So if your Stokvel or burial society is on a similar path or needs guidance, Thai Vision Media consultants are ready to help you every step of the way. So get in touch with them using the contact details on your screen or reach out on social media pages. Until next time, take care and goodbye.
This program is brought to you by Thai Vision Media, helping Stokvels and burial societies reach their goals.